Here we are. Okay. So hey guys, welcome to anyone who is has trickled in to join us. This is El Kami, but y'all know me as my real government name, Edward. um, I wanted to do this Hispanic Heritage speaker series on education, and brought to you two guests. So I'm gonna put the mic on the two guests that are here to introduce themselves and their heritage or their Hispanic heritage.
Okay, I'll go first. My name is Lauren Larraga Jauregui, and my parents are Mexican, so I'm from Mexican descent. Do you want me to say a little bit just that, or?
Yeah, just that for now. Later we're gonna go a little bit more into that.
My name is Edgar Najera. My family heritage is Guatemala, originally from Guatemala, and happy to be here.
Great. Well, thank you guys for being here or virtually because we're not here together, right? um, so to begin this off, Hispanic Heritage Month started on like 3 days ago, 4 days ago on September 15th. And I wanted to start this podcast just to talk a little bit about Hispanics that are doing work in the education field or the education world. So I'm gonna start by asking Lauren why did you started in this career path and what made you interested in it?
Wait, Lauren, you're muted.
Sorry. I was just saying that my degree is in early childhood and elementary education. Right now, I teach kindergarten in a Spanish dual language immersion setting. So I teach in Spanish to my kindergartners. I teach math, science, and Spanish language arts. And I have a partner teacher that teaches English language arts as well as social studies. I think originally when I got into education, it was kind of like a glorification. You kind of idealize life of being a teacher, but then as I went through my program, you realize how much social justice work you can do within education, and you realize like all the inequities that certain demographics face. And then going into the DLI setting, the dual language immersion setting, it was just really a way for me to give back to my Hispanic community, especially teaching in Spanish. I teach in a school that's over 75% of an Hispanic population, and then within my class alone, all of my kids are Hispanic. So just being able to connect with my parents and my students and have school not be this like other place where you suddenly have to learn to speak English is really nice to me, along with a bunch of other things, but that's it for now.
That's good. Edgar, how about you? What made you start teaching?
Edgar, now you're muted.
I'm dead. Yeah, so same questions to you. Like, what made you go into teaching right after undergrad?
Well, so for me, I don't think I ever thought going to college I was going to become a teacher after Bard, but I remember senior year, I just needed a job. Sometimes you're in that situation where you say, what am I going to do after college? I mean, I have a degree in philosophy, and what in the world are you going to do with a degree like that, right? But I had a friend who was going to go into Success Academy, and he said, I told him, hey, how do I get in? I mean, it's already, what was it like? It's already, almost a month before we finish senior year. So I just need that job that is going to take me, and I'm not going to have to apply to a lot of jobs. So I think that was the first job I applied to, and I got it. And I think it's because they accept a lot of people who just, right out of college. It just worked for me. And I think that I wanted to challenge because we can provide that space. But
Okay.
We'll see how the conversation takes us. You good?
I'm not gonna lie, but I did got off camera, like my connection broke. I don't know if you guys were stalling for me, but
Yep.
Oh, we tried, but it's okay. We just kept it going.
oh, that's good. That's good. See, this you guys need people like this in your life, Lauren and then Edgar. Anywho, so the little bit, the half of what I've heard of what you said, Edgar, you know, I didn't hear all of it, but from what you said in the beginning is that you applied to be a teacher, based on like the options you had available after you graduated, you know, and look at you now, you know, you're a year and a half, into, Success Academy and doing a good job. So that's pretty cool. I know that for a lot of people, including myself, jobs are a scarcity now in this job market. So my next question is going to be more about the two different, teachings that you guys both do, like, or different area you guys are teaching in. So, Edgar, you're teaching in New York, and Lauren, you're teaching in Georgia. So, what do you guys think? Is there like a big? I mean, I don't know a lot about like the education system, in terms of the public education system in the South and in the North. But since you guys are in those fields right now, do you guys think that there are like different things that, you know, different states do to teach students, or is it pretty much the same all across, no matter which state?
Well, for me, it's a little it is different across states. I'll start off with that. I think Georgia, they're experiencing this, you know, this thing called like the new Latino diaspora. So Georgia isn't a historically like migrant area, I guess you could say, like not where a lot of Hispanic people used to congregate or migrate to. But then we're seeing in like the last, I don't know, the last years or so that the Latino population and Hispanic population has increased, where usually it was states like along the border. So states that have been along the border, they've had more time, I guess, or more experience in teaching immigrant youth and or children with transnational experiences. So they've been have these bilingual programs. They've been having bilingual education, and it's like we're just now starting to, at least in the last few years, we're just now starting to see that here in Georgia. Um, so it is different. I guess we're trying our best, and it is interesting to see like across the board. Cause at least in my school, like we're primarily Hispanic, so that they do have more of like an intentional approach to how we reach out to those communities. But when you go to schools like, I don't know, like in North Atlanta, where the population is a little more scarce, it's different. So education is different across the board depending on what your demographics are, both like racially and economically.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, from what I've seen, I mean, I've only seen certain types of pedagogical systems. For Success Academy, in the way that I've seen, it's different from what I have experienced. Let's say back home, it's definitely a step in the right direction. There are things that they do that I find to be extremely well done. But you know, there's also things that can be improved, as we can say about a lot of different things. But it is a charter school, so it is, you know, it's different. There's a level of commitment coming from parents as well as teachers and the students. There's a high, you know, we pride ourselves on having stellar test scores. Like they just have amazing test scores, and we have a big responsibility to deliver, right, as the students at the school, at the management level, and it's heavy on standardized testing, because we have to, you know, somehow justify all the money we're getting from charity and the government. And you could say, a lot of people have issues with that, because if you're dedicating a lot of time to just, test scores and not really paying attention to the individual needs of each student, then there's a disconnect between who they are as human beings, and also just seeing them as input output, machines and little robots just coming into the classroom and become, indoctrinated into this that we have at the school.
Interesting. So I know you mentioned that. So what you're in the system that you're working in is a charter system, and Lauren, you're working in a public school system. What are like the benefits and the risk of both? Like, our charter school bring out like more outcomes than public schools? Because I know there's like three type of sectors. There's the private sector, or private schools. Then there's charter schools, and then there's public schools. Do you think one is better than the other, or is it like the pedagogical nuances that Edgar was talking about that makes a difference?
It's hard to answer because like there is like this fear, at least in like the public school eye, that charter schools are just kind of a step into like the privatization of education, and that's really like the last kind of sector that isn't privatized, like like healthcare or something, everything else. So there's a lot of fear that goes into like the more charter schools we have, like this just a step into not having public education anymore. So I don't know, there's different ideas behind that. Whether one is better than the other, you can't really say. Like charter schools, you have the flexibility to do things that maybe public schools don't, which can be a good thing and a bad thing. So I guess it just depends. And it also depends like charter school to charter school. You can't speak on all charter schools the same way, because they all kind of operate to some level independently.
Yeah, and that's also the political debate, right? Should we privatize education, or should we just, just keep it public? And I think that's what a lot of these charter schools are doing. They're trying to showcase that through test scores and the quality of education, regardless of who you are or what your children need, you can perform amazingly, have incredible test scores, and be sent to college. The idea is to get you to college through your test scores. And there's definitely a lot of things that I've noticed that Success Academy does. Like they have an ops team, for example. The teacher doesn't have to do anything regarding the management of the school. That is given to the ops team. All I have to do is read my lesson plans, to understand my lesson plans, come into the classroom and perform the lesson plan. I don't create my lesson plans. I don't have to worry about creating lesson plans. So there's a lot of what would you call that? This distribution of labor, I guess, if you can put it, right, to like different people. And the teacher just has to worry about making sure that he's presenting a good lesson and teaching the students the model of the school, and how we are creating this education that is going to help them do well and get to college, right? For sure, there is things that I think they're doing right. There are other things that we can improve, like I said before. But I don't necessarily think that one is better than the other. I think that if anything, families should be given the option. Anyone should be given the option to whatever your preference is. I don't think that one should supersede the other or overcome the other. And I think that's what one of the fights is. At a national level, like what kind of education should we have at our place, at our country.
Like for me personally, I don't agree with like the scripted lesson plans, because they feel very like prescriptive to like students, kind of like a one size fits all model, and that's not always
right.
the case. Like even with I teach in accounting, like you to see, like, but within Gwinnett County, not all the schools look the same. And like our demographics are very different from like, one side of Gwinnett to the other, and not one type of lesson plan is going to fit everybody. And that's not to say that we don't do scripted lessons in Gwinnett, because to some degree we do. Like, you kind of have to, like, they have specific things that we have to say, and we have to do it in a certain way. But that doesn't work 100% of the time, especially to who you're teaching. Then your students have no way to, connect to that. And, I think that the way to learn is really to like connect with what you're learning. But yeah, that's also not to say that charter schools are bad. There's like charter schools specifically for like STEM or specifically for the arts. And if you as a student are interested in either one of those things or whatever, then it would be great for you to go to a charter school where you can focus on what you're passionate about, as opposed to going to a public school where you won't get that specific content.
Definitely.
So I would like to just dip in a little bit on this public and private school. I went to a public high school and public. I went to the public education system all throughout like K through 12, or like since elementary school to high school, and then going into a private school, a private college. I definitely saw the difference in my peers that I took classes with. Not to say that the public school that I went to were not par with like private school. It's just the difference definitely showed. And I just think that, like Lauren was saying, like if public schools were able to not be as scripted of how they teach, maybe I could have been as informed or of like different literatures that people at my college or at college were already expecting for you to read. And every time the teachers asked about like some type of book or anything, like almost half, or if not all, my classmates have already read it. And I was like, well, I wasn't really introduced that book in my high school. So, I already, or people who weren't fortunate to go to like these type of schools or private schools, we're starting in a step behind the others. And which is, it kind of causes a delay in the classroom for you. But nevertheless, you have to just keep up. But so with that said, I know like the two of you guys were mentioning the word demographic. So like, how do you, as Hispanics, navigate the classroom environment as a Hispanic person, knowing English and Spanish, to make sure that what you guys experienced before in the education system, is bettering and not like repeating. Like what type of like actions or things you guys have done or see that you guys want to like rewrite?
Well, for me, like when I was growing up, I was the first, my parents come from an immigrant background, and my parents didn't speak English when I was starting off school. So, and I didn't speak English either starting school. So it was, I really had to, I went into school and it was like learn English. I don't remember much of it, but it was also like my mom's time to learn English. So she had to learn English with me as she was navigating school. And that was, in a time where not a lot of Hispanic people were working at public schools or whatever. So it was just kind of her having to figure it out. So as, I entered to be a teacher, you kind of, like I see myself in all of my students, and I see like my mom and all of their parents, because I think of how hard it was for my mom to help me out and like try to do her best. So I always keep that in mind, and I do my best to like keep in contact with my parents, especially since I am Spanish speaking. I can communicate with them in their own language, and they don't have to struggle as much as per se like my mom did. So I always keep that in mind. I always keep in mind like the achievement gap, that we have, because I teach at a Title I school, and it's like we are low income, and we are second language learners, or not second language learners, because I have learners of English, I guess I could say. so keeping that in mind and thinking about my experiences and just doing my best to accommodate to all of my students' needs and making sure, even though I'm just in kindergarten, like making sure I do my best so that they can have that strong foundation moving forward, and that and also just like the emotional aspect of it, like embracing that one day you will be bilingual if you don't know English, or you will be multilingual. I have a student that's from Guatemala and she speaks Spanish as a native language, and it's like, that's so amazing. Like, don't lose that. Like, that's so important. And like, she's learning English. It's like, one day you will be. It didn't, like, there was no value or emphasis placed on that, at least for my teachers. Like, nobody told me how important it was to speak two languages. So I'm really trying to like tell my kids, like, yes, this is so important for you to keep your Spanish, and like, it's important for you to talk to your grandma. Like, so both like the academics and the social aspect of it.
So for me, it's been different because I've been in two schools. I've been at Upper West, and right now I'm in the Bronx. I was moved this year, but at the other school, it was a little bit more diverse. Like, I had white students, I had Asian students, I also had black students. Some of them were Hispanic as well, maybe like 25% of my classroom or the school, demographics was Hispanic, so they would speak Spanish. The one I'm at right now is mostly students from African descent, and I haven't really used my Spanish background that much, right? Because, like I said, most of the lesson plans are scripted. I have to abide to the script, and I wish like Lauren, it's really nice that you're working at a school where you can use that. I wish my space allowed for that a little bit more. I'm not sure if that is getting at your question, Edward. I just want to make sure.
No, that is getting at because it just goes to say that the space that you're in can really be a wall for you to even express your identity as how you wanted to express it. In Lauren's case, like her environment, and then correct me if I'm wrong, you said that you feel comfortable, or even if you don't feel comfortable, but you make sure to encourage your students that if they do speak Spanish, that to be proud of their bilingualness. And like you, on the other hand, you want to have that type of like wiggle room around, but because of like the space you're in, you gotta kind of stick to that route, that schedule that the administration sets for. And it's interesting because this is two clashing perspectives, because on one hand, from a public school, Lauren still has the capability to express herself or her Hispanic, or bring a little bit of her Hispanic heritage into the classroom. And on your hand, in a charter school, not just U.S. Hispanic, but people who have like diverse background and maybe want to include that type of like culture in their lesson plannings might not be able to do that unless they have like administrative, permission. So
yeah, I mean, because
yeah.
the most of the population speaks English, right? So there is actually applied for a school that was bilingual, and the instruction was in Spanish actually, but I didn't get the job, unfortunately. And it was also a charter school. So even if I was to come and propose something like that, right, be like, maybe we can teach in both languages. I'm pretty sure people will look at me and say, why? You know what I mean? Like, everything that we do, everything we write about, the testing, everything is in English. So why do we even need to do that? And there's a we can definitely argue and go on a tangent about how being bilingual itself has a lot of neurological benefits, and children that speak two languages, it's been proven that they can imagine things from a lot of different perspectives, because if you can speak two languages, are you able to think in twofold? Are you able to just like be able to access a specific language structure because you have been taught at such a young age to like adapt to a completely different grammatical system. So that's enough of that I'm gonna say, but we really don't know how beneficial it could be.
But I will say, like, even though I teach my students in Spanish, they are tested in English. Like, none of their standardized tests, like the district exams, are offered in Spanish. They're all in English. They do, and my school it just happens to be that all my kids are Hispanic, but in other schools they do try to lean towards like a 50-50 model where half the kids are non-Hispanic and the other half are Hispanic, so they have monolingual students also learning Spanish. But yeah, all the tests are in English, so they learn it in Spanish, but they have to know it in English too. But even with this scripted curriculum, I would encourage you to, like, even if it's outside of you teaching them, if you let them like incorporate their own culture into their assignments, if just in casual conversation you guys talk about your culture, or you share that with them and then they can share that with you. That's just a little way of making those connections.
Definitely.
Wow, that was amazing. I'm tearing up inside. No, but it's interesting that you guys are discussing this because, unlike if it's all right or not all right to, to represent your own culture in your lessons, especially the Hispanic culture, being that we are like the largest growing minority population in the U.S. along with Asian Americans. So it's, in every high school and every school they have classes for, Spanish, learning Spanish as a second language, not Spanish as a second language, but like you can take Spanish or Spanish in every school because Spanish is like on par with, the English speakers here in the U.S. So there's nowhere that I go that I don't know. I mean, that I know that there are people that speak Spanish there. And especially in New York, New York with the Dominicans, Puerto Ricans, it's especially just full of just, Latin culture. So, how do you guys think that the demographics will continue to change in terms of like access to higher education for Latinos or Latino students here in the U.S.? Do you think? I know me and Lauren were part of a club in our high school that promoted education. So Hispanic organization promoted education, and their goal was to encourage encourage and also what's it called? Man, if they're looking at this, they're gonna be like, you're doing us wrong. David is gonna be like, how
encourage and promote.
Yeah. No,
it's literally in the name.
The mission was to increase the graduation rates amongst high school students. There you go. I got you guys. Was to increase the graduation rates amongst high school students in high school because in Georgia there wasn't the graduation rates for Hispanic, which like lagging behind other populations or demographics here. So we worked to promote Hispanic education for high school students. So with that, do you guys see that, the access or the pipeline for Latinos for higher education in terms of like colleges and universities is getting easier or harder, or is there still a lack of representation for Hispanic and Latinos in colleges today?
So to me, my experience is definitely very interesting because I went to an international school, so it was under the Monroe, right, educational line, which is an educational line in New York, but it was called Pan American International High School, and you can see that the name says Pan American International High School, right? That international because most of the student body was composed of Hispanic, like recent immigrants that arrived to the country. And I remember when I arrived to the U.S., I was immediately sent, like, and maybe 2 weeks after or 3 weeks after, I was sent to high school. Well, I was sent first to middle school, but then I was like too old to go to middle school. So they were like, "You're too old. You need to be in high school already." So you send me to high school, and the teachers. It was very surprising, very interesting because the teachers that I had, some of them were bilingual. Some of them did not speak Spanish at all. Some of them, were from, Central America or Dominican. Most of the students were, I would say that 85% of the students were Dominican, recent immigrants to the country. Maybe about 10% probably were Ecuadorian, and the other 5% was probably Central American, Puerto Rico students, from South Central American students, and I remember reading an article once that we were one of the biggest graduation classes at a specific year. I think it was 2016 or something like that, 2017. So we do have a high graduation rate, but few of those students go to college though. I only knew two other people, like three of us from that school, that went to a college like Bard with a scholarship, and even that was a big accomplishment. It was we had to really work for that. But I mean, how as a Hispanic that comes to the country and has to learn a new language, a new culture, and most of we were young adults by that time, right? So our English, we're still adapting to learning English and all of that. But then we went to college because we were given a scholarship, the three of us, and then we were able to make it to the working place, become professionals in our own individual ways. But the obstacles that are placed for Hispanic students and immigrant students is making it difficult, for us to get a higher education. So maybe I'm sounding pessimistic about it, but I'm very hopeful that our population will improve, because we just need to do the work, right? And I know that Kingston High School, for example, they have a big amount of students coming from Central America. At least they were about 2 years ago, and they were going straight into Kingston High School, be placed with other students in the classroom. They spoke no English. They were just learning, and that's how I was sent into the high school environment as well. And that's how I got to learn English. So I guess only time will tell how things are gonna go. But with the social political environment, that is really hard for Hispanics. I couldn't really tell.
I do agree that it's hard. It's hard. The whole college process is hard. I mean, like as a first generation student, like even just like filling out FAFSA, I had to I felt like I had to relearn it every time I did it. And I mean, that's not something that's available for immigrant youth. So I was fortunate that I even had that to begin with, but then also not knowing how to navigate that. Like, thankfully we had Miss Al, we had a work down to help guide us through them. There was a lot of first generation students there applying to college. Like a lot of times nobody in our family has done that. So we have to navigate that ourselves. But I will say that I am hopeful. I think, I don't remember where I saw it, but we are, our graduating classes are getting bigger and bigger. And I don't know if it's because our population is increasing or because, more people are going to college, more Hispanics are going to college, or maybe it's a little bit of both. But it is hard. It's a lot of money. Not everybody can afford to go to college. Thankfully, I had scholarships and I went to a state school, so I didn't have to go far away, didn't have to pay that extra buck. But I am hopeful that more and more of us will go, and as more and more of us go, we'll have more representation, and that'll just inspire our younger siblings, younger cousins to follow in our footsteps.
A- Amen. Yes. Let's take a moment of silence for that. Yes. No, I hear y'all. Like, I know, yeah, when applying to colleges, it was definitely not an easy thing. We did have resources, and I couldn't imagine myself, going through the whole application process without those resources. And
Yeah.
something that's crazy is that there are people that don't have those resources that will help them, throughout those through that process. And I know that for me, I don't know, and other first generation students, so like, it's like college was not even a debate, like you going to go to
Yeah.
college, like, because obviously, it ties in with the American dream that I guess was sold to our parents, or it's painted of America, like come to the U.S., give your children a better opportunity than what y'all had before, and then keep it going. I mean, now it's really questionable about that American dream, if it's still a reality or if it's just crumbling down. But I believe that for parents that got to see their college, I mean their kids graduate, that was their American dream in a way. Um, so with that said, moving on to the next slide. No, it's fine. There's no slides. There's no slides. So can you guys talk to me a little bit about your experience, or like what are some problems that you see in education today? Aside from maybe these SATs that doesn't really, measure a person's intelligence, but it's just like a part of who they are, like just a little bit, but not in total. Do you see like any other problems, or is that also a problem? Like what do you guys think?
I think there's a lot of problems, so it's hard to like try and sum it up. You could,
Like what are the
I mean,
three problems? Top three problems.
top three problems.
Yeah.
I don't even know. I guess a big one is funding.
Okay.
Like the way that we fund our schools is inequitable. Like you know, um, like within the same school district, you'll have like schools on opposite ends, and it's outrageous. Like our school, like our band and orchestra at like our high school, like we didn't have a booster club. I think band maybe got one, but it's like I mean booster clubs are like where the parents like put money into the school, and the school's able to use that money for whatever they need. But like for a low income school where parents barely have money to sustain themselves, like how are you supposed to funnel that money into your own school? So it's just kind of another one of those things where like the rich get richer and the poor get poorer, and it's just but like the education version of it. So that's one big problem, and I think if we solve that problem, a lot of other things would also be fixed. So I'll just stick with that one for now. But there's a lot. There's a lot more.
Okay.
I think I don't remember who I heard this quote from before, but not a quote, a conversation, and in one of the things that it was a professor, I forget his name, but he said that the issue with education and the way that we see it is that it's a weeding out process, right? You take a specific amount of like people, you place them inside a classroom, and you give them like trials, right? You give them tests. The ones who get to perform well, they are the ones who will get to advance to the next level. You can take out a kind of video game only, or kind of like they only the strongest survives type of like scenario. That if you perform well in your test scores, you're gonna go to a good college, right? You need to somehow present your portfolio and sell yourself. It's like a way for you to sell yourself to, to colleges. Um, so when we look at education or the school system in that way of how it, we are trialed in that way, like we're tested in that way, and selected. It's like a very gruesome selecting process sometimes. So that is what can be very difficult to swallow, right? And to think about. But in another different ways, I think education, it's still a very beautiful thing. And I think right now, teachers are proving to be some of the most essential people when it comes to, the market. What we do is just so essential. And I one of the other reasons why I became a teacher was also now excited to be a teacher is because I get to stay in the classroom, and being in the classroom to me it's such a beautiful thing. Yeah, you can say whatever you want about, like all you're doing is giving these kids trauma and anxiety by putting them, through this test all the time, but they still have fun. They still come to school, have lunch, have a snack. They still talk to their friends. They still like watch a brain pop. Still get to learn about history and read stories. And I remember my teacher, my co-teacher last year, she used to play classical music in the morning. We would have a routine. The kids would come in, unpack, eat their breakfast, do their math problem, and everyone would just be so relaxed. Like I would come into the classroom and be like, feel like I could just sit down and take a little nap there. There was no stress whatsoever in the classroom. And that's the space that she cultivated. And that's the space where kids could come into, whatever was going on outside, that space was for them. It was their space. And that's what we wanted to give them, right? At that, during those times. So it's beautiful in that sense. Kids still come, they still have fun, they still do their work, they're still learning. So kind of a long-winded answer to what you were asking, but education is still, still such an important organization.
Yeah, but the earlier point you was making, like education is, I don't know, it's a business. Like even though some of it is public, like it's still a business. And what he was saying about like preparing us, like they track us from the very beginning, and then there's like they use like second graders, I think it's second grade reading scores to calculate how many prisons they're gonna need in the future. And it's like that type of thing kind of like makes you like turn your head. And yeah, like they do like take the top off, and it's like, all right, like these are the kids that are gonna go to the top schools, and then the rest they just groom them for what do you call it? I forgot the term. Like your everyday labor type of thing. Like they basically like they go in selecting who's going to be blue collar and who's going to be white collar, and they don't like once they've decided they don't take the extra effort to pull you up. At least in some cases. That's not to say that it's true for like individual classrooms. It is very true that being a teacher is a very beautiful job, and I love going into work, even though I know that a lot of things are bad. But I love going into work and giving my kids that safe space and knowing that it's like, okay, at least you're safe while you're here. But yeah.
Perfect. That was so beautiful. Another moment of silence, guys. But anyway, no, Edgar, you definitely was the avatar with that airbending. You said you did that wasn't meant to be a long-winded answer, but I was like, this man is avatar state right now. But I know, a little joke here and there to lighten up the mood. But now back to the serious mood. All right, so this is a very controversial topic that I'm gonna bring up, but I just want to hear you guys' opinion about what you guys thoughts about affirmative action. So affirmative action, if you guys know, are when colleges save like seats to admit certain students to diversify their campus. Um, arguments on both sides. Well, one argument is that it's unfair for students to be admitted because of their like ethnicity or cultural background, rather than be admitted based on merit alone. A lot of colleges like Harvard, Yale, and like other top schools have been sued because of affirmative action. So recently there was like a Harvard case of Asian Americans feeling discriminated against because they're not being admitted, and while they having like all the like the good scores and top school, I mean having good scores, but their possible admission was given to another student base or preference to another student because of like their diverse background. And another argument is that, well, what's the difference between affirmative actions and then legacy admissions? Legacy admission is basically students or parents of students that have gone to that school are preferred to go into that school. So there's like a gray area between those two arguments. So I want to hear like what are you guys' thoughts about if affirmative action is a good idea or a bad idea, or what what exactly should be the question we should be asking.
I'm gonna let you go first, Edgar, because I've think about it.
I mean, that's a very interesting topic. I would have to do a little bit more research on that because it's definitely one of those things that we can go on to argue forever and never really get to a conclusion. So, I mean, should schools be, reserving, like that's what they're doing. They're reserving seats for you're saying students of color, right? As opposed to accepting students based on their merits or scores alone. I think in a certain sense, I see the purpose of that, right? You want to have a student body that is diverse. I think the more experiences and perspectives that you get to have in a specific classroom. Let's just imagine the classroom for a second. If you have a classroom full of white students, where's the diversity, right? I mean, there is diversity of thought and personality, I guess. But what about diversity of race and the experiences that can come with that? So in that sense, I say affirmative action is it should be a thing. But then on the other hand, also, what the hell? I have my goals right here. I want to go to Harvard. Why are you not accepting me, right? I mean, I worked my butt off to ensure that I have the qualities that are necessary for me to be able to, come into this prestigious university or college. You're telling me no because you have a limited amount of students that you can accept from my race. I mean, that is a very tricky thing to just like wrap your head around, because I don't think that should be the case. But I think it also speaks a lot to the value that we place on the brand of a specific school. I'm humiliated that you're not accepting me at Harvard or Princeton or whatever the name of those, Ivy League schools. And part of it is because they want to have a diploma that says Harvard on their diploma, and they don't want to just go to another college, which people can easily do that. If they're not accepted at a specific college, then suck it up and go to another college. But of course, people want to be, at the top. They want to be elite or whatever. But I mean, I still think affirmative action should be a thing, because that's how we, diversify the school system and how we prevent, schools from being overly white in a way, right? So there should always be a checks and balance system, I think, and affirmative action might be that.
I think you froze again.
Do you want to tackle that question?
Yeah. I don't know. Like, I had heard about the debate and I have thought about it, but it is kind of like I don't know. Like, I do believe that like having diversity within your classroom, both like diversity of thought and cultural diversity, and it adds value to the type of education you're getting. Because if you just go into an echo chamber, like whatever type of echo chamber that might be, like you're just hearing the same stuff that you're experiencing. Like, even as an Hispanic person myself, like it adds value to my education to hear people from different perspectives. So of course, campuses need to be diverse. How we go about it, I don't know. Like, affirmative action is giving people that opportunity to step into these campuses where they might have not had the chance to go to. And this isn't to say that these people don't have the scores to get in. Like, you still have to have the numbers to get into the school. You know, it's not like they're just taking somebody who wouldn't have otherwise been able to get in. So like, these people are still earning their spot, I think, but I do also think that a lot of the time people might turn and look at these people and be like, oh, well, you got in because of affirmative action. And it you know, kind of as a way to like put them down almost, like,
yeah,
well, you know, you couldn't have gotten in if it weren't because you're a minority. So
right.
It's just like, I don't know what the right answer is. Like ideally people wouldn't be looking at your background, like your cultural background, to determine if you get in or not. They would just, you know, look at your scores, your essay, whatever you submit, and, you know, decide that this person, you know, we want this person in here. But then I don't know if that would diminish the amount of minorities that get in. So it's just like, I just don't know what the right answer is. I don't know what the solution would be.
Well, I feel like part of what affirmative action is trying to do is to you know, fight against systematic racism, right? So one of the ideas is that because of systematic racism, you know, there's a certain level of unconscious bias that goes into the specific, you know, this whoever is doing the acceptance at the college.
But I'm wondering if there's a different way to combat that systematic racism. That is, like, if we could move from affirmative action to something different. I just don't know what that something different would be.
I mean, that's interesting because in terms of like the affirmative action debate, you know, they've done some studies. I mean, in some schools, it has done the job of like diversifying the campus and like bringing in more diversity of not just race but of thought. Because living as I mean, not living, but being from a diverse background, I say it's already you're living a different perspective, living point of view, which brings into nuance to a conversation. But then I know that there have been some studies done on schools that have done affirmative action or do affirmative actions where the students that admit it do not, they have higher retention rates at that school and end up dropping out because of them being, I guess, preferred giving that admission, but not really being qualified for that type of like rigorous environment. And not to say also that students can be given a chance, and maybe, you know, in them being put in this environment will like help them, you know, tap into that unreserved knowledge that, you know, just been waiting to just, you know, come out. But like students who go into like the schools that they were meant to like, or that met like their needs or the qualifies, they excel in. So I don't know, like I see where some of the schools that do it have good intentions. Like all of this is done for good intentions purposes and not out of malice. And again, like you guys were saying, like the question is like, what is a better way to bring in equity and also equity and inclusion into colleges that have had troubled past before of admitting certain students based on like race. So it is definitely an ongoing debate.
With that, I would say that it would also be a matter of hiring diverse faculty, because it's not just bringing in diverse students, but having diverse faculty to teach that diverse class. So that brings up like another can of worms.
That is true. I think at Bard, I had zero people like person of color teacher. Um, and I was like, I mean, I really just took it as is. I'm like, look, I'm just here for my education and I'm out, like whoever's teaching me, I'm gonna get this bag and, do what I gotta do and just keep it pushing. But I do know that representation for people like, for instance, when Black Panther came out, a lot of like African Americans were like, wow, like the first black superhero. Well, there were actually other black superheroes, but that was like, wow, like we're finally being seen and things like that. So like in the school system, seeing a professor or a dean of students or something like that, like that comes from a similar background, can also motivate a student to or make a student feel welcome in those spaces. So that is a good point you made about bringing in diversity of diversifying the staff as well. Yeah. So we are coming close to the end. Actually, we're past the end, but those transitions that you have to say. We're coming close to an end, and I just want to take the time. Two things. One, to thank you guys for coming and being part of this first speaker series of Hispanic Heritage of Edgami. Edgami is me if you guys haven't guessed. And this is a month where Hispanic Heritage Month, where we celebrate Hispanic culture and Hispanic people. But, in reality, Hispanic month is every month. You know what I'm saying? I see everybody drinking a Corona, and I'm just like, well, it's Hispanic month, or like doing any music, Bad Bunny. I'm like, that's Hispanic month, Hispanic Day. So, Hispanic culture or Hispanic month is not just September 15th to November 15th. It's really, we are Hispanic, so everything we do is Hispanic in a way. So thank you guys again for coming in. I want to give you guys like a few seconds to, talk about like something positive of being Hispanic, and what makes you proud of being Hispanic, basically.
I'm proud to be Hispanic because our people are beautiful, our language is beautiful, our food is great. The struggle that we go through just makes us stronger, and I'm just proud to walk life living through this point of view and so I wouldn't trade it for anything.
Edgar.
I got interrupted by my friends who were like knocking on my door. And what was the question that you were saying?
What makes you proud of being Hispanic? Giving you a few seconds to say something before we end the podcast. So,
there's a lot of things. I mean, you have access to whole culture, and you can always, as I wrote on my thesis, that you can have, double consciousness, double kind of sort of perspective.
Speak a little bit, put a shameless plug, speak a little bit about your thesis, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, my thesis was, it's a creative project, combining philosophy, literature, poetry, and Caribbean thought into like a memoir, and sort of like analyzing the the Hispanic experience through the lenses of specific thinkers, mainly Du Bois and his idea of double consciousness, how that can be related to this Hispanic experience, and offering my story as someone who transitioned from Guatemala to the U.S. Um, and and part of what I said there is that you have access as a Hispanic. You have access if you live in the U.S. You have access to this wealth of knowledge. You can see the world through different two perspectives essentially. Your Hispanic perspective and your I guess Americanized perspective. So I think that that's really cool. If you get access to that, it's a beautiful thing.
Wow, that's so beautiful, bro. Check out his senior thesis at the Bard College Library. um, and let me just add why I'm proud to be Hispanic myself, or something that makes me proud of being Hispanic. Of all ethnicities, to be Hispanic is number one. You know what I'm saying? Like, we have everything. We got the sazon, the flavor. The music, the people. You know what I'm saying? We got beautiful people all over the world. Shout out, Dominican Republic. We just always representing, carrying it in our back, to make sure that we keep it alive. But I'm proud of it because it's just, it's a uniting culture. Like, I can go to South America right now, and there's like, Chileans, Salvadorian, Honduran, like Hispanics are all over the world, and that's what it's just a beautiful thing to be part of that culture, being born into it and being around it, and you know, and that's just amazing. And then especially if it comes with another language, like what? Like, that's two for one deal. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's crazy. Who wouldn't signed up? But that's what makes me proud of being Hispanic. And again, I'd like to thank you guys for coming. And for those who um, came and joined us all throughout, I don't know who stayed all throughout. If y'all did, y'all are real ones. But yeah, that's it. Thank you guys, and stay tuned for the next Hispanic Heritage Speaker Series next Saturday. All right.
Bye.
Bye. Okay, how do I end stream? And